Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, written into a church community that Paul knew really well. Corinth was a major port city in ancient world with lots of temples, Greek Roman gods. It was a big economic center. So Paul usually came here as a missionary. In a year and a half, getting to know people, talking to them about Jesus. And a whole bunch of people became followers and formed a community. You can read all about Acts chapter 18. So after a while, Paul moved on to start churches in other cities. He started getting reports that things were not going as well at all. Joe Baggage Corner, plagued by all kinds of problems. And that's why he wrote this letter. It's broken up to 5 main parts along the final reading greeting. These 5 sections correspond to 5 main problems that Paul addressing. So the letter is like a collection of short essays on different topics that core ideals that unite or piece together. So here's what this each section describes problem, but always responds to the problem with some part of the story of the gospel, which is good news of Jesus. Shows how it's not living out what they say they believe. So this is the letter and the learning every area through life lens of gospel. Let us dive in and see how it does in chapter 1 to 4, the problem, the divisions, church. There's some other teachers who had come to a town, Paul left, Nan, Apollo, and Peter, and people had picked a few teacher and then became groupies around leader and started to talk about disrespect people who favored the other leader or the teacher. So Paul responds to this kind of sarcastic chart says, "You have to be kidding me. The church is not a popularity contest. The church is a community of people centered around Jesus. As the leaders, teachers are simply servants of Jesus. So while you might prefer one leader more than another, not worth dividing, uncertainly speaking poorly about each other. Send the church Jesus. The good news is who he is, what he has done." Chapter 5 to 7, Paul addresses some problems related to sex. There's a number of people, second church, one guy, stepmother church. A stepmother, a number of people worship locals, Greek gods, sleeping at prostitutes who work there. Not only that, but the people in the church were saying that this was all fine. He said, "We're free, Christ, grace is bottomless, right? It's fine." And Paul said, "It's not fine." And with the gospel in hand, shows us how wrong-headed this thinking is. He says, remember, verse all, Jesus died for reasons including the ruins, broken relationship that caused by sexual conduct. So if you're a Christian, your integrity is one of the main ways that respond to Jesus' love and grace. Paul also reminds them, Jesus is physically raised from the dead, so our body will be raised from the dead, which means your body is being redeemed by Jesus now. In the future, what do you do is your body matters. It matters a lot. It is not yours to do whatever you want. Paul is being super clear, being follower of Jesus. Paul does not compromise when it comes to sexual integrity. Chapter 8 to 10, issues about food. Not just food preference, like, do you like, dislike for the food? The issues of Corinthians were divided over is meat that came animal sacrifice, local temples, the Greek and Roman gods, and the split between the Jewish, non-Jewish Christians about response issue. And once Paul appeals to some of the core ideas of the gospel, again, this is from foremost is Jesus, Lord Jesus, than any other god. So if you're in a situation where there's meat that's dedicated to another god, and there's people around might watch you, include all local Christian worshiping Jesus, worship other gods too. Paul says if the signal, don't eat the meat. Your loyalty is to Jesus, and you should love the people more than yourself, not mislead them. Like quickly justified says, listen, as Christian believers, God's the creator of all things, including the animals. And the temple idols, we believe, are pieces of wood and stone. So if you're not no one around who's going to understand the actions and you're hungry, eat up. You're free as a new human Christ to follow your conscience. Accountability matters. So it will come, okay, situation to eat, not than the other. A core principle is love. Love will not deny itself and look out for well-being of others, and love God's love is at the core of the gospel. What Jesus did for died for us. Paul says it's what Christians should do for people. Chapter 11 to 14, we address the problems with the worship gathering. These were some people with really powerful spiritual experience in the gathering. So start playing a lot loud, knowing languages. Other people who started sharing, teaching word from God, and then someone would get up and interrupt them because they want to share. And it was chaotic, distracting people, visitors from hearing the gospel. So Calvinist Paul helps them to think about all the purpose it's got to help to see what kind of behavior appropriate. He's gathered a place where God's Spirit should be working through everybody and it should be happen in a unified way to develop this cool metaphor about church as human body. It's one who has all these parts. Each part serves a unique, important role. So he goes on, name a whole bunch of things the Spirit does through different people and all for the building of the church. That is key phrase this past chapter. And Paul concludes the highest value in the gathering should be concept, culture of the gospel, God's love. Love is the key word. We're in chapter 2. Love will compel each kind of gathering to use the role, serve and seek the well-being of others. So Paul applies it to all to Corinthians problems. So people think the purpose of gathering is to have intensive spiritual experience, again, chance to speak their minds. Paul says, listen, I'm a big fan, powerful experience of prayers, but it's distracted people, freaks them out. I should stop because I'm loving myself more than I'm loving the people. Gathering around Jesus should orderly so they will learn, sing, and worship, and God to speaking to them. This problem Paul addresses is the issue of Jesus' resurrection and the future hope of Jesus' followers. Some people in the church who were the ideal resurrection is ridiculous. It doesn't really matter to every Christian or acts to big time. He begins by saying that resurrection is an insensible part of the gospel. Who believe in it? Because of the 100 of eyewitnesses that saw Jesus alive in a physical body after being publicly executed by the Romans. Jesus did not rise from the dead, Paul says. Death was meaningless. We're all still lost to sin, selfishness. We should stop being Christians. Paul shows the details, resurrection of Jesus' victory over death, evil, knowledge, source of life, power of us, represents and promise of future hope for the whole world. It's because resurrection we have received around Jesus, and it's the reason we have motivation, sexual integrity, the source of the power for loving of other people, ourselves, and ultimately the hope for victory over death. So that Paul concludes, we do believe Jesus has risen from the dead, and which means the gospel is not a moral advice or a recipe for private spirituality. Announcement about Jesus open whole new reality. That's what 1 Corinthians is all about, seeing all the part of life through the lens of the gospel. Paul's second letter to Corinthians. It is called 2 Corinthians in our Bibles. There are multiple clues with the letter. A second thing he ever wrote the church of ancient Corinth. Start of Jesus' community in Corinth. Second beginning of the mission journeys. Here's the story of book of Acts chapter 18. The moving Paul got a report. All things are not going well there. So he wrote the letter. So we called up 1 Corinthians to correct these problems. And appears in many church rejected Paul's teaching in the letter, rebelled against his authority. So you learn this letter, Paul is a follow-up, a person. It's called the painful visit, and after he sent a letter, say it was written anguish and tears. So after his measures, when all of the Corinthians realized their ignorance and apologized to Paul, and they wanted to reconcile. Apostle Paul wrote this letter to ensure them love and commitment. It's by design with 3 main sections addressing a distinct topic. So Paul first analyzed recognition with the Corinthians. Chapter 8 and 9 addresses the topic of forgotten generosity. All chapters of Paul challenges the remaining Corinthians who used to reject him. Let's dive in and you'll see how it works. If all opens up by thinking God's all mercy and comfort, not peace, encouragement, and goodness during a time of division and dispute. He acknowledges that things has been tense since the painful visit, makes clear he has forgiven them, he wants to open his honest relationship. But why did they reject Paul in the first place? Discover later in this letter, Corinthians had this discord part as a leader. He was poor, he was earned meager, living to manual labor, under constant persecution, suffering, he was often homeless. Top it off, he wasn't a very impressive public speaker. So as the Corinthians were exposed to others more wealthy Christian leaders, started to think less of Paul. Actually ashamed of him. No response first. Elevation of leaders simply because their wealth and concept of behavior of Jesus, total distorted value system. True Christian leaders, Paul says, it's not about status, self-promotion. Not this is itself and all its apostles kept slaves to King Jesus, who would lead them in position of triumph. Paul does not be impressive, or at a point to one who is Jesus. He alludes the reason and demands of the Corinthians, provide recommendations, build authority and credentials, ridiculous to Paul. Church wouldn't even exist if they hadn't started it. He says they are proof of genuine leadership. Their letter of recommendation. He clearly quotes from the prophet Jeremiah and Ezekiel saying, God's Spirit has written his letter of recommendation under our hearts and the covenant people. Corinthians shouldn't need any proof than that. They mention the covenant, that leads Paul to a long comparison to the old covenant between God and Israel, made by Moses, the covenant between God and the Corinthians, made by Jesus' Spirit. No covenant made by Mount Sinai, a truly glorious. And Moses himself shined with God's glory. That glory eventually faded. Not mention the fact of law, covenant effective and truly transformed Israel. The new covenant, by comparison, is more glorious. The resurrection of Jesus is the very glory of God. It is one forever. Spirit that now transforms people, being more faithful just like Jesus himself. It all sounds amazing, but means who doesn't want to share God's own glory? Paul goes on to show how the paradox of the cross is upside down, the Queen's ideals of glorious success. So after all, Jesus' glorious execution as King took place through suffering, execution, and death. On the cross, Jesus reveals salvation. He died for the sins, the road of reckoning the people to God. The cross does not even more. It was God's character, as being utter suffering love that seeks the well-being for others. The cross reveals also the crucifixion, a way of life. Paul's goal is this way of life through ministering intimate cross. So all the apostolic career has been marked by humility, suffering, and poverty. It's all served Corinthians. So we disapprove of Paul's poverty and suffering. Disapprove of Jesus too. Paul's way of life in the issue is actually the proof, actually representative of the crucified, risen Jesus. Paul really wants to reconcile with the Corinthians. They won't let things lie and they transform and embrace the outside paradox of the cross. Passionate appear, Paul moves on to address the topic of forgotten generosity. The Jewish Christian Jerusalem have fallen to poverty due to the famine. Paul's raising among new churches that he started, founded non-Jewish that would send out relief, send the unity and Isaiah of Jesus. So many of his churches that will to give with Paul. The conflict with Paul, they haven't said for their gift. For Paul, this isn't just money. This is a sign that Corinthians that has been transformed. The gospel about Jesus. His heart is a story of generosity. Paul says, you know the generosity of grace of Lord Jesus, God Messiah. Even though he's rich, for his sake he became poor. So the true poverty you might become rich. It's not a story of the gospel through financial metaphor. And gave up his glorious honor or wealth. And lowered himself to die like a poor slave. So other people who impure of sin and death, exalted and become wealthy, the riches of God's grace. Become Christian is a letter or story seek deep in your mind and heart. Transform you into someone more generous and more willing to share your life and resources to help others. Final section of the letters, Paul focused on the main source of the conflict, Corinthians. That group of repressive leaders, sarcastically called the super apostles. They came to Cora, promoting themselves and mounting Paul up a successful leader. The risk of self-promoting says, these great guys want to compare credentials. They can totally take them on. How to use Bible expressions? So is Paul. He is Pharisee of God's mercy, as the Bible memorized. They want to brag about Jesus' superior knowledge, Jesus. Paul's actually seen and hang out with Jesus, risen Jesus. He actually has a vision of Jesus' heavenly throne room. More importantly, Paul is giving his entire life to the mission of Jesus. Sacrifice of comfort and stability, and never ask the Corinthians for money. Unlike the super apostles who charge a lot, or Paul earned his own living. Paul says he refuses to brag about his compliments because they aren't the things that really matter to a Christian. Instead, what they brag about, how flawed, how weak he is. In the Agathis, he discovers the love and mercy of Jesus. Jesus Christ is sufficient for you, and Paul, my power is more perfect to weakness. Paul concludes the letter with a warning of Corinthians. They need to check themselves. The content of Paul has way of life, the love for the apostles. It all shows a grasp of Jesus at a fundamental level. They're not living like transformed followers of Jesus, so he invites them once again to humble themselves before the love of God Jesus. Socrates gives us a really unique window of the life of Paul. The paradox is that the cross of Jesus. The cross challenges our values, our ways of seeking in the world. We value success, education, wealth. But God values humanity, weakness, because God's love, power, are main through suffering and death, resurrection of Jesus. The cross unleashes the transformation, power, presence of Spirit, empower the followers to take up His crucifixion of life and make it His own. That's what 2 Corinthians is all about.